Hello and welcome to Hamburg. This is BioEurope 2019. I'm joined by Jane Osbourn, who has a number of titles. She's chair of the UK Bioindustry Association.
Correct.
Until recently, you were head of R&D in the UK for MedImmune, the biologics arm of AstraZeneca. And now that you stepped down from that role, you're now sort of taking on some other roles. But I'd actually like to go back to the sort of that MedImmune place, and actually go back almost like 25 years, because Cambridge Antibody Technology was where you started. Cambridge Antibody Technology was the company that were the guys who originally invented Humira, the world's best-selling drug. It was about, 2005 that AstraZeneca acquired?
2006, AstraZeneca acquired CAT.
Yeah. So at that time, having gone from a small, biotech, clearly innovative, clearly successful, because you create Humira. Could you sort of tell us what that transition was like when sort of the big bear decides it wants to dance with CAT?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think it was an interesting journey because we were very, very good at technology development and building our phage libraries, and had some really, really successful partnerships and alliances at that point. And actually the acquisition by AZ really came out of a very, very good clinical scientific collaboration in the respiratory space. We'd actually been working with AZ for a couple of years before acquisition, with the team at Charnwood actually developing respiratory products. And it was a very nice synergistic relationship because we needed to understand more on the clinical side of things. It worked really, really well. So we sort of fast forward to 2006, and actually we were in a position where we needed to think about long-term future of the company. We had some litigation around royalties. But actually the very positive side of that was we had built this really, really genuinely scientifically based relationship with AZ that actually felt like that acquisition was a sort of natural next step. And that would give us the opportunity to build oncology portfolios, really drive patient benefit. So it was fairly seamless, and in the initial sort of first year when CAT was acquired, AZ were really quite hands-off around allowing us to carry on with our biotech structures, gave us funding, gave us advice when we needed it. It was very, very productive.
Because that was the time when a lot of pharma companies realized that actually biologics was the real deal, and therefore were looking to access. Of course, a year after they make the CAT acquisition, they then spend $16 billion or whatever it was on MedImmune. So you mentioned sort of how AstraZeneca had kind of been hands-off and allowed you to still do you at Cambridge, because at that time AstraZeneca was based up in Macclesfield, their R&D.
Yeah, so the acquisition of MedImmune I think was interesting because what we had at CAT was some good technology and some good ideas. We didn't have manufacturing capabilities. We didn't have a portfolio in infectious disease. We didn't have things on the market. And actually the fit between CAT and MedImmune was really nice because they'd actually got an established product on the market. They had Synergis in the US. They had manufacturing capabilities, which was something that you probably sort of lose track, but in the sort of 2006, 2007, biologics manufacturing capacity was a real issue. So it actually made really good sense for CAT and MedImmune to combine forces, if you like. And from a technology perspective, that worked really well. What CAT was very good at was optimizing antibodies, selecting them from large libraries. Medi in the US had actually developed some interesting technology around half-life engineering the other end of the antibody. And when you put all our capabilities in biopharmaceutical process development together as well, we were world leading in being able to produce developable antibodies. So it was a really good scientific fit. And actually I think what we also had with the team at MedImmune was a really good cultural fit, because we were very, very science-focused, data-driven. So
that was both MedImmune and CAT?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was going to say, how did the fact that you had American biotech and you had UK biotech, was there any tension?
There's always a storming phase when you put teams together, and I think what we had to do at that time was really over-communicate. So we spent I think we all realised that the key was understanding each other's science, and if we could do that and understand where we could be of mutual benefit, then that was the way forward. And AZ were very enabling of those conversations to happen. So there was a period of about 6 months when we were sort of really testing out the science, making sure that so I was flying over to the US a lot and vice versa. But it was really worth investing in those conversations, because then when it came to making decisions about where capabilities would sit, how we would put things together, we actually managed to come up with some really quite creative solutions for that, which were, I think were the sort of starting point of...
So could you describe what one of those creative solutions might have looked like?
So really making sure that we were sharing technology where we needed to, so sort of transferring phage libraries over to the US, understanding the half-life engineering, but then also sharing the pipelines. So we had pipelines that were slightly overlapping, but not actually that much for a couple of biotechs. We all knew we needed to develop in oncology. We agreed we'd build oncology, and we agreed some ways of working as a leadership team. And actually, one of the things that was really fundamental was a really long-term, shared, bold ambition. And great credit to Bahija Jalal, who was head of R&D at that point. We sat down and said, right, well, given all the capabilities and actually the fantastic funding that AZ were putting into biologics, how can we make the most of that? And we set a goal of, one biologic entity a year from 2016. So we gave ourselves, a good... we looked at what we had. We worked out where we can start delivering, how we were going to do that, and we sort of worked back from that. So that was great.
At what point in that storming, time before we get to, I guess, is it norming or forming or? Did the various teams stop thinking I'm a cat person or I'm a medi person, or is there still a sort of a sense of, people sort of hang on to their biological heritage?
A bit of both, and I think that's quite a good thing. So I think we had this shared joint ambition and shared objectives, and we did get much more seamless about global working. I think we did a really good job on that. We worked hard at it. You've got to work at it. Again, it goes back to communication. But then we did have cultures within that organisation that were, by necessity, I think, a bit different, but that was okay. I think the CATS UK culture was very collaborative and quite sort of modest, actually. I think that was sort of one of the things that we had to make sure we were explaining our science in a way that was balanced, and likewise, our colleagues in the US were really science focused and actually really collaborative, but possibly a bit more later stage collaboration. So I think we sort of built a lot more academic collaborations.
And of course now, MedImmune, when one looks at the AstraZeneca pipeline, which is actually one of the most successful pipelines at the moment, in the last 5 years in particular, one can sort of see the huge influence of that MediCat influence in that firma. You've now sort of moved on.
Before moving on, just to say, that was very much a collaboration with our AZ colleagues as well, and sort of their insight and ability to drive the clinical side of things and actually provide that support and the right kind of environment was really beneficial. So I think there's been a natural evolution now of AZ and biologics and moving more to therapy area focus rather than format, and I think that actually is a really important sort of evolution.
As I say, you're moving on. You now stepped down from that role at MedImmune, and you mentioned when CAT kind of got acquired, I mean, it was in a sort of a situation where something needed to happen. It was a tough time for all biotechs.
Yeah.
You're now going into sort of little biotech companies as chair or as chief science officer in a couple of the roles. What is the sort of the state of the UK biotech industry at the moment?
Yeah, so I see a lot of great science in the UK, and I think actually understanding the capabilities and how you put them together is what we're doing in the. So the companies that I'm focusing on now, I'm chair of Mogrify, which is a cell therapy company. I think it's a really interesting platform therapeutics play. It transforms cell A to cell B without going through intermediate pluripotent cells. And I think I'm seeing lots of interesting technology ideas coming through the UK that have potentially quite profound applications. So I think that the state of ideas and innovation in the UK is very strong. It's been quite interesting sort of going through the funding side of it, and actually I think we've done pretty well at finding that seed funding and early funding, how that will evolve in terms of longer term funding. And I think we do have to make sure that we capitalise and invest in some of the early companies to the level where you can compete, in a global market. But I think we've all got our heads around that, and it's been really nice actually, the level of support across the UK ecosystem for startup ideas and innovation. I mean, since I've left MedImmune, the community has been just hugely generous in its sort of offers of advice, money, sort of thinking through, just sounding boards. And I think that's quite special in the UK. I think that is really important, and it works. So I think we really have to stay confident and make sure that we're asking for enough money to succeed in the right way, and I think that's the key. So
good.
Yeah.
Right, well, Jane,
Yeah.
thanks very much for
Really good to talk to you, Mike. Yeah, thanks a lot.
If you found this video useful, subscribe to the channel and get the opportunity to see other content that we've got coming that will look at industry trends and discussions with thought leaders.